morning, Stocktwits Nation. It is the Daily Rip Live Tuesday, July 8th, here with Shy Valor. I'm Katy Perry, and Jake Wu is back because it's Tuesday. What's up, Jake? How was your
It
4th?
is Tuesday. It was really good. It's good. My son's getting old enough where he understands what fireworks are and all that. So,
Uh-oh.
oh yeah.
Did he blow up his first thing?
No, he watched. He watched. He's
Okay.
very he's very infatuated with that. So, yeah, great fourth.
It's
Wasn't too
fun.
hot in Denver, so can't complain.
Nice. I remember my first firecracker experiment, and my older cousins took us outside and we caught frogs and we taped them to the firecracker and then launched them. So, Shy, I
Didn't
don't
hear
know if
any of
that's
that.
big out where where you're from, but that's what we were doing in my neck of the woods. It's horrible, by the way. I don't condone animal abuse.
That
Yeah, fireworks are not like that out in SoCal, but I am
Thank
envious
God.
of it.
Thank God. Well, we were just talking backstage. It feels like it's crazy to say. It feels like a slow news week, which is pretty chill. So it's a good day to have Jake here and do some of his magic chart tricks. Real quick, the market though pulled back Monday. So Wall Street woke up to fresh tariff threats, but also we're pushing that deadline back to August 1st. And so they tweeted out a new round of 25 to 40% tariffs aimed at countries that failed to strike trade deals, but people have until August 1st to figure that out. We also had relatively flat day in the market. We talked yesterday about Tesla was the major mover, down 7% yesterday, following his announcement of his intention to start a new political party, and also the big beautiful bill had a lot of provisions in there that weren't so helpful for Tesla. And I know Jake, you had some thoughts on that on the other end on the nuclear stock side. So maybe we could start there. Like, what did you see in that bill, and did you see a trade opportunity either against or not with the Tesla side or on the nuclear side?
Well, I mean, as far as the nuclear side goes, the charts were just set up. So a lot of the time, you have a chart set up, and then you just need a trigger.
Mhm.
The nuclear energy kind of side of things in the bill, those incentives were extended up until 2033. So the fact that they didn't take them away or not extend them just made sense with the chart. So that's definitely a sector I'm looking at. It had about 3 weeks of a pullback for a lot of these names, so they look ready to go again, and they've moved pretty well over the last day, especially when the market was pretty red yesterday. So
Yeah, and you've been tracking Oklo in particular. Are there any other setups you have for that particular trade?
yeah, I mean most of them are set up. So rising tide generally will lift all ships. Oops, that's my dog. So yeah, now I mean SMR looks good. LTBR looks good. Oklo is just more of it's a very liquid name, and it just overall just really, um, I think is like just the go-to. I think it's just Oklo's got this weird kind of easy to say ticker, and people just kind of treat it as a meme stock almost.
Yeah, and Shy, on your end of things, I'm curious where nuclear fits into kind of the core themes you're tracking and how you think about that. I know we've been trending this way with AI, but how do you think about like the nuclear energy tech or providers um, in terms of your long-term thematics?
Yeah, it's 100% one part of the calculus if you're a big AI investor. For AI to reach its max potential, you need power to essentially expand. And the only way to do that is through nuclear. Yes, there's like a hot minute that solar and wind was going to be somewhat of a solution. Uh, Unfortunately, you need these data centers to run at high speed 24/7. That's something that solar and wind cannot provide. That's why nuclear is the only option for AI to reach its max potential. For me, I don't have any exposure yet. I do plan on Oklo is on my list now. I do believe that it's a little pricey, especially when on a fundamental basis. I think the navigability of nuclear becoming a heavy component of AI is real is just it takes a couple years for these plants to really build up. It's not like a couple months story. It's a multi-year story, and unfortunately, that whole theme got ahead of me way quickly than I would have liked. Hoping, I'm like waiting for that one day or 1 week where when Jensen had that one comment, took all quantum stocks down like
Hmm.
a stupid amount. I'm hoping for a similar type of week for nuclear names, so I can just go hard on that dip. So that's
Yeah.
like what I'm hoping for. Maybe it doesn't happen, but that's I have my soldiers ready to pounce on that nuclear theme whenever we get the opportunity.
And when you look at the like an Oklo, that seems like a pure play nuclear versus like a constellation, which has different types of like. Do you think one of those is better suited to win out? Someone who's purely nuclear focused, or an energy company that's expanding in that area? Like, are there any comps on like the software side, for example? We were talking about Oracle yesterday being like a legacy player. Do you think these new entrants are better positioned, or some of these legacy energy brands?
So I don't like it's difficult to say compared to software because everyone thinks like, oh, you're saying this is going to be the Nvidia. I'm not trying to say that. What
Mhm.
I'm saying is Oklo's solution towards the utility market is disruptive to how Nvidia was for AI. It's not the Nvidia of nuclear. Please don't coin that phrase. But Oklo isn't trying to compete in the utility market. Like they're trying to redesign the mini nuclear reactors that can be dropped next to the data centers, the military bases and factories, like places that need the 24/7 constant off-grid power. So when you think about these AI server farms and these missile defense systems and these remote mining sites which are becoming more and more popular, like it's going to be essential to have somewhat of a future of distributed energy, and nuclear and Oklo's aiming to kind of become that go-to source for it. You might be saying like the market's already pricing that in at I haven't looked recently. It's probably over $10 billion market cap. I don't know what it's at right now, but it it isn't really being priced in as an early stage energy company. It really isn't being priced in as a utility company. So if they execute, I do think there'll be way more. But if there's
Mhm.
any kind of time slips, if there's any kind of cost balloons, which there's going to be, especially in nuclear, it's not gonna be a clean lineage of concept execution. There's going to be some bumps along the way. That's just the name of the game in that space. Uh, I do think that this is like Oklo is the one with the greatest ceiling because again, not a utility market. They're trying to disrupt something far greater. But it's also riskier because of that. So I treat it as the moonshots theme, but my risk appetite is very moonshotty. Like if
Yeah.
you want to risk the biscuit, especially in nuclear, I'd rather go shoot for the home run, and Oklo is that home run.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we'll be paying attention to if you make any moves next time there's some sector trends. Jake, I know we got a lot of Jake stands here today because Jake, every time you come on the show, our audience just expands tremendously. So I know the people want to hear from you. They want to see the charts. They want to know what you're looking at. You got any setups you want to share with us? Anything you're geeking out on over there for the fans at home?
Yeah, I mean, I can go over the Oklo chart,
Let's do
kind
it.
of give the thesis on that. Um, yeah, as far as Oklo goes, it's a lot of the setups that I look for are pretty much the same thing. It's like, you just find it doesn't matter if it's a nuclear stock, if it's Webull, if it's something else. It's a very pretty simple setup I'm looking for. You've got a lot of volume, i.e., the volume shelf, volume supporting price at a specific area. In this case, um, Wednesday was really when things got interesting here. Price kind of had this doji forming, and you've got just a very basic falling wedge here. So you've kind of like stair stepped up literally the last couple months, and so this is kind of the next potential step to the upside. You don't have a lot of volume here, so this is another kind of component of what I look for. You don't have a lot of volume nodes, which means there's not a lot of supply. Pretty much, I mean, until you get to like the 60s. So my upside target is 63.95 up to 64.80. That's simply just like a pivot, this pivot point here from mid to late June. Um, And yeah, I mean, as far as the setup goes, generally price can move very quickly through these volume gaps. There's just not a lot of liquidity stopping the price from moving up. So it almost acts as like a a vacuum, um, for just the lack of volume there. So yeah, I think it's very possible Oklo could probably hit 60 plus this week. And it's just like I said, it's kind of one of those names that's kind of a meme stock. Once it starts moving, it starts hitting scanners, it starts hitting social media, and for whatever reason, it's just something people get. It's kind of like Webull. Last
Mm,
last week, everybody started talking about Webull. Um, and it made its move just because everybody kind of hopped on the train. So this is a similar name. I think a lot of people have been waiting to see, okay, this thing had an offering. That's another reason I like it here, because they are known for, raising money. If they're going to raise money, they might as well raise it into strength, which they did in June. And now that that offering is over and those shares are tied up, for the at least in the short term, this gives the price the ability to kind of catch a bid again, and people aren't going to be worried about buying in and holding overnight, waiting for a public offering announcement or something like that because they just had one. So yeah, it just kind of checks off a lot of the list here. Amazon, I know you mentioned Prime Day.
mhm.
Amazon's another name that I'm pretty bullish on right now. You've had some pretty interesting options flow going in that one over the last couple days. A lot of short dated options for the 11th and the 18th, kind of far out of the money, the 225s and the 230s. You even saw some pretty big action on the 240s for like the first week of April. And for me, it's very simple. I'm just really looking for a 1 to 2 day move through this volume gap. Very similar, kind of what I just talked about on Oklo, where you just have kind of this vacuum, this area where there's not a lot of volume, there's not a lot of overhang of supply until you get to around 228.50 up to around right around 230. So that's why my 228 target has been there. It's simply the start of this volume node, which is going to be where you may start hitting some short-term supply. But yeah, I've just kind of been waiting for a potential 1 to 2 day kind of impulse move through this gap. And the market looks pretty decent pre-market, as far as the VIX starting to pull back again, crypto starting to move. So this is a name that's been lagging, and if it does catch a bid, I could see it moving pretty quick.
Yeah. Jake, just for our investors that are more longer term, can you quickly break down the couple terms, the falling wedge on the Oklo chart? What is that exactly? And then the volume node. I think that would be helpful just quickly for people who aren't as deep in this as you are.
Yeah, so falling wedge is just kind of this kind of shape where you're getting lower lows, lower highs in a pretty kind of linear matter, and
Mm-hmm.
then these lower lows and you kind of get compression, right? So the lows and the highs are getting tighter and tighter, and that's what kind of forms this falling wedge. So generally, a falling wedge, statistically speaking, a lot of the time, especially if you're already in an uptrend, a falling wedge is going to break to the upside, which it already has. And then if you're in a downtrend, falling wedge is a decent low risk, potentially high reward setup where it's very clear what your invalidation is if it breaks down. But when you do have this type of setup, this kind of compression within an uptrend already, you can get some pretty big moves just because, like I said, price is compressing. Those highs and those lows are getting small. The distance between the highs and the lows are getting smaller and smaller, and that's kind of what creates the wedge. The volume nodes, we're looking at the volume profile right now. The volume profile is essentially just measuring volume as a function of price versus time. So generally, if you're looking at a chart and you want to look up volume, it's at the bottom of the chart. So these volume bars here are telling you how much volume happened, and we're on the daily chart. So a specific day, and that's what these volume bars are. Well, the volume bars on the y-axis are showing you how much volume happened at specific prices. So the width of each one of these little gray bars, the width is just the price range that the volume is being measured at. So in this case, if you look at this aggregation of volume here, that's telling you there's a lot of volume that has occurred. There's a lot of volume that's aggregated pretty much from around 48.50 all the way up to around 54.50. So that, there's about 4 volume nodes here, but if you really zoom in to one of these, you're pretty much just saying, all right, how much volume happened from this point here to the top of it. So in this case, this particular volume node is measuring from around 3750 to around 39. So that's what each one of those bars is showing, is just how much volume occurred. And the more volume that is aggregating at a specific price, generally the more support or kind of a base that price can move up off of. That's why I sometimes call these volume shelves like a launch pad, because it's a lot of volume that's aggregated there, and it kind of creates this base, because now you can see, once price got down to this area, the 48s to the 53s, 54s, a lot of these shares that initially bought back in early June are back to break even. So if everybody's back to break even, selling dries up because there's no more profit cushion to sell. Let's say you bought at 53, it goes up to 68. Maybe you have 1,000 shares. Maybe you start selling off, blocks of 100 shares. Well, once price gets back down to where you initially bought at, you're not going to sell because you're back to break even. So that's why this area creates kind of a base for price, because selling dries up and then you kind of get that next leg up.
So fascinating. And also, I feel like I'm not a day trader. I feel like you guys are pretty good at the data visualization. Like there's multiple things being shown here, but once you explain what they are, it's very intuitive. So thank you for breaking that down. Zooming out a bit, we talked about Amazon. We got Prime Day coming up. If you guys remember when this started, it was just one day. It was Prime Day. Now it's a 4-day marathon. I believe last year and probably the prior year, Prime Day moved more product and revenue than all of the Black Friday to Cyber Monday across all retailers. So people go hard on Prime Day. That is of course kicking off today. Adobe is predicting $23.8 billion in online sales, which would be a 28% jump from the year prior. Shy, I know we mentioned yesterday we were talking about the robots, but I think this is interesting for people that aren't in the weeds of Amazon. You look at numbers like that, and then you mentioned yesterday the margins on their retail, the commerce, are nothing. They're almost break even. Why can you explain the role of automation in all of this, and where you think how big could this margin unlock be once they figure this out?
Massive. And I think that first off, 75% of Americans have Prime. That's a massive monopoly, if you think about it. So that's a huge lever that Amazon can pull for any future secular growth theme. Robotics, automation, physical AI is a clear lane for them to capitalize on. So the reason why people are 75% of Americans have Prime is because the pricing is unmatched and the convenience is unmatched, and that's due to logistic networks, these manufacturing hubs. Um, Unfortunately, because of the proximity of all these places, like they're trying to really provide deliveries everywhere in America. It requires a lot of soldiers on the ground in order to do that, especially when they're trying to aim for same day delivery for someone like me in LA versus someone in the mountains of Arkansas. Like they're trying to make it like convenient for everyone. So that requires a heavy FTE counts, workforce counts. So the reason why the retail business is going to be allow them to be an enabler of drones and physical AI is that these workers can start working 24/7. So they have these manufacturing hubs now almost at every corner of the USA. Imagine just having a drone like, all right, well, it's going to go there, drone pickup there. Like, it's going to cause not just same day deliveries. Like, we're going to start getting a 6-hour window now. So previously in the pre prime era, I used to have to go to work in the mornings, like, oh man, after work, I probably have to go pick this thing up because I need it for
Mhm.
tonight. In this, once physical AI really scales and automation, drones, and these robots are really going to be able to be implemented in everyday life, like that is going to be the norm where you just get something at breakfast, you realize you don't have something that you want. At dinner, you're going to get it at your doorstep. And unfortunately, there isn't that many humans in order to fulfill that vision. But automation is what's going to provide solutions to problems that you didn't think were possible. And that's another theory on why AI is going to be so disruptive, because all these enterprises, they want to be solving these problems, these bottlenecks. They just don't have the bandwidth or the payroll in order to do so. AI unlocks both of those. That's why this like production boom we're about to get, that's part of the calculus of why productivity is going to skyrocket in the next 5 years, is because of these possibilities that AI will unlock. And for Amazon, a lot of that's going to be the physical AI component of it. So right now, I think they're trying to just break even on the e-commerce business. Like they make billions of dollars on their e-commerce business. I wish I had FinChat. Let me go on FinChat real quick. I'm sure they have it. What their e-commerce side of the business, how much money they make. They do. They are the best. So $250 billion a year they make on their e-commerce business.
Jeez.
Break even. Let's just say 10%, just 10%. That's what the margins are going to be now in the physical AI world. That's $25 billion a
Yeah.
year, like that. Snap of a finger, just on one-time cost of acquiring these humanoids, acquiring these drones, etc. But after that, it's $25 billion recurring profits. And that's growing at 8% rate. So it's just going to compound and compound. And that's what the margin expansion opportunity for Amazon is for me, is that retail side of their business. And people are like, oh, it's a $2 trillion company. I don't even know what the market cap is. 25 billion is nothing. Okay, sure. What do you think that 25 billion is going to unlock? It's probably going to unlock their next identity on how they're going to conquer the future new digital economy. So like, I think it's massive.
Yeah, and Daniel brought up yesterday vertical integration. I'm curious if you think like we mentioned automation yesterday. The photo we showed was in a factory, but then you also think about the last mile aspect. And even in New York, I've noticed that the Amazon delivery vehicles are getting smaller and smaller and more nimble. And now there's just like it's almost like a bunch of rickshaws running around, but I think they're EV or something because you can almost picture over time the human being removed from those. Do you think Amazon would acquire somebody who has these autonomous robots or vehicles, or do you think they're more likely to partner up?
Partner up. I don't think it's their way. I think they have such, again, 75% of Americans have Prime. I think their retail business provides them permanence into all these growth themes that they don't want to deal with the capex headaches. They don't want to deal with like I know, like, I agree with what Daniel's saying. Like, controlling your vertical integration stack is massive. It's an essential component. That's why I'm so bullish on Google, is because they're the only one that completely owns the loop. But I think that's just not Amazon's DNA. Like, they try to capitalize on anything that will enable their retail business because they know it's never going to go away. It's going to be permanent. What's the American way is buying. I forgot what the consumption stat was that Dana was referencing yesterday, but we are essentially the world's GDP on consumption. Like, it's substantial. So if Amazon has 75% mind share of that, they're satisfied with that alone, and that's going to be enable them to really grow and grow for their margins due to physical AI. So like, I don't think they'll acquire it. Like I mentioned, like once Tesla solves humanoids, I think they're gonna buy thousands of humanoids right off. They're gonna be the first customer.
Mm,
Whomever is gonna really scale drones in a way fashion will probably, they're gonna buy a bunch of drones. Maybe drones are the in-house thing, but they don't. I don't know. They acquired a company. I'm blanking on it, that enable them to have that million robots in their logistic
mm.
warehouse. So like maybe drones is going to be a thing for them to try to acquire. But I just think that in maybe 20 and 30 years, once humanoids are, the pricing goes lower and lower and they become more of a mess, maybe they start creating their own, but not in the next couple of decades.
It's crazy to think about. Speaking of consumption, I saw this morning Shein is filing to go public on the Singapore exchange, but people are saying it's sort of a head fake. They got held up on the London exchange. Of course, that is a huge company. That would be a huge win for London, but they're held up there, and so TBD what happens there. I'm curious, Jake, when you normally do your charts here, they're U.S. stocks. Do you ever do anything on any other exchanges or any foreign stocks?
No, not really. Just the Chinese stocks, the
Yep.
ADRs, which I'm starting to get pretty close to being bullish on Chinese stocks again. They've just really melted the last few weeks, so I definitely have my eye on Baba. But as far as like other other markets, generally just those markets aren't extremely liquid, so I
Mhm.
kind of just stick to the US stocks.
Yeah. You're America
But
first is what you're saying.
yeah, but the problem with the ADRs, and this is definitely from a technical perspective, a pretty annoying part about Baba, especially Baba, JD, they're like gold, or like they just gap almost every day. So
Mm,
it makes it hard to do technicals. So I'm generally looking at like a Baba or like a JD, K-Web, like more on a weekly or monthly time frame to kind of form a thesis, because just a lot of the time the daily chart is so gappy, it's hard to really do technical analysis on it. But the gaps do act as good targets for potential resistance if we do get a move up. If there's gaps below, those are good levels to watch for potential support. Um, but yeah, no, trading Chinese stocks definitely takes a pretty tough mentality, because you can have some drawdowns before you finally get the move. But yeah, I would say this market is getting pretty close to a pretty big move. I'll be
and
keeping an eye on the options flow in the next couple days.
yeah, and so why real quick, why Baba in particular? There's just the most movement.
Just the most liquid.
Yep.
That's the one thing. Even for Oklo, I was getting questions on, well, why did you just buy Oklo shares? And it's like, well, if you look at the if you look at the spreads and the implied volatility on Oklo or some of these like Webull, when I was trading Webull last week, people are asking, well, why didn't you just get in the options? It's like, well, you're sometimes dealing with like this massive spread, so trying to get in or out, there's a lot of slippage there. And especially for a name like Oklo that does have a lot of that volatility priced into the options contract, if it doesn't move strong, then you're gonna kind of get those premiums getting hit, because you're not getting any volatility that's already priced in. So yeah, no, Baba is just the most liquid. Um, like even JD, I like trading JD, but there's just not a ton of volume sometimes on those, and Baba's just, yeah, a much more
Yeah.
liquid name.
Makes sense. Shai, it's been a while since we talked about China stocks on the long term front. Has your stance on those evolved since last time we chatted? I think you were avoiding. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I mean,
Do you have any new? Wait, was this the one? Was this the analogy where you said it was like the spare tire, or when Austin was on, or am I thinking of something different?
no, it was that one. Essentially,
Okay.
I'm just you rent, you don't own China stocks. I think that's so I agree with Jake's sentiment. Like, listen, it's a trade. If that's where the next hot pocket is in the market, like kudos. But no, it's rented time. Don't own a long term. It's too unpredictable. There's just too many great opportunities in U.S. companies that, uh, for me as a aggressive long-term investor, like I'd rather just own the names that I don't have to worry about finding the right time to exit in, because I'm not a good I just don't know how to find time to exit. It's not my strength. So that's why you rent China and you don't own it.
Yeah, it's definitely just a trade. And like I said, I mean, I generally stay away from it because my subscribers are so and probably followers who aren't even subscribed, just scarred from previous trades we've been in that have been pretty rough drawdowns before the moves.
Mm.
And I totally get it. That's why I kind of avoid them, because I'll bring up Baba and people are like, oh God, no, not Chinese stocks. So for that reason, I may just avoid it. But yeah, it's just one of those things that there's just these cycles with Chinese names, and there's big moves when they happen, and you get an 8% move in Baba, that's going to move the options pricing, prices potentially hundreds of percent. So
Interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. We of course have the opening bell. We are a little changed today as we get into the trading day. As we were talking about top of the show, feels like compared to previous weeks, not a lot going on. I know we're buckling up for some earnings coming up later in the month. Um, I went in the chat, Jake. I was asking if anyone has any setups they want to see. Not to put you on the spot. Uh, Somebody called out CRDO. I don't know if you know anything about these guys or if it's worth pulling up their chart even in Stocktwits and just getting a rapid reaction. But thought it could be fun to take some requests
yeah, I
from
don't know.
viewers.
I've never heard of the stock, but I can
All
take a
right.
look at it.
Rapid reaction.
Rapid
Smash or
reaction,
pass. Fredo.
CRDO Credo. Yeah, looks good. I mean, it looks like you're about to break out here pretty much, I guess, to new all-time highs. This is, when you're hitting new all-time highs, this is always tough to kind of try to figure out what's the next target, because you don't really have, it's called pretty much looking to the left, right? If we look to the left, there's no price action to refer to, meaning, price has never been higher than the all-time high of 95.71. So it's like, okay, what do I reference to from here? This is generally when I'll use the 0.618 extension. So I'll take the most recent measured move. In this case, I would choose this move here, pretty much this high from June 26th to the low on July 1st. And then, that's the measured move. And then this is the 1.618 extension. So if we did break out here, and you've got a pretty solid kind of ascending triangle here. So ascending triangles, kind of same thing. You've just got these higher lows, but you can kind of see here that
Jake, is ascending triangle the opposite of the falling wedge? Are they different things?
well, so the main difference is just the flatness here. So you have ascending triangles, descending triangles. The falling wedge, the both resistance and support are diagonal,
Got
where
it.
this is definitely like a statistically bullish setup. So generally you will resolve to the upside more than the downside on these, but price action always has to confirm. So essentially your trigger here would be a daily close above this high. What did we say? It was, 95.71. So if there was a daily close above 95.71, then my upside target would be that 0.618 extension at 102.79. But yeah,
Got it.
I have no idea what this stock is. And that's a big fallacy a lot of people have of me, is like, well, he's in the market, he knows all these stocks. Like
Yeah.
I know a very kind of concentrated basket of names that I focus on. Like in my subscription, it's like 20 stocks, and I just
Yeah.
do analysis on it every day. I'm not bringing new stocks in, because you really have to learn the personality of a stock. There's a lot of things that go into it, and technical analysis is great, but if you don't really know the personality of the stock, meaning you don't know some of the nuances of, maybe CRDO always gaps down and then moves up intraday. There's just specific kind of characteristics of each name that you really want to have an idea of before you just jump into a name, because if you know the personality of the stock, and you know that those types of flushes happen in the morning before moving up, it can help you mentally, because you're expecting, you're like, oh, okay, well, that happens all the time, versus if you just jump into something and you're like, holy crap, this thing gapped down 3%, and you don't realize that happens a lot before you kind of do have an intraday move, then it's a lot easier to get stopped out and all of that. So knowing the personality is important. And like I said, there's a lot of names like this. I probably should know this name because it's about to hit new all-time highs, but I just don't.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it
that's
makes sense the depth that you're, and it's similar with Shy, really, in a different way. The depth you're going into, it's not about knowing a little bit about a lot of things. It's about having a conviction about certain things and going really deep. I think that's a good
Well,
takeaway for people.
also, it's like that's the CEO mentality. Like, know 70% of a lot of different things, then just be super specific about one thing. Like, that's just how you. Honestly, you probably have to know that skill set in the future. But for Credo, like I get this question in my subscriber group in small caps a lot. So I looked into it semi amount. The reason I didn't look into it too much, one customer makes up 60% of their revenue, massive concentration risk. B, 90% of their revenue comes from China. I'm not touching the stock. Doesn't matter what their mode is. Those two are like, maybe I can forgive one red flag. Both of those are massive red flags for me, especially when you just don't know the escalation from China and US. And 90% of the revenues from China / Hong Kong. Fine. I call Hong Kong China. Maybe you guys don't want to do that, but I do. That's a huge risk that I'm like, it's not worth it. Especially I think it's at 15 bill now if it's at a $90 price range. So like it's not cheap. It's like I think they have $500 million in sales. So like it's expensive and there's massive China exposure and concentration risk on customer.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it is like people expect, oh, you know the markets either on the technical side or thematic. It's like you must know everything, but focus is important and key. I want to flip over to fintech for hot sec. Shy, some news out of SoFi, your buddy Daniel's favorite. Seeing that they are expanding their alternative assets on the platform as of today. They're also making moves in crypto. So I think this is like a movement we're seeing with what Robinhood's doing. So SoFi is offering more access to venture capital funds directly through their platform for retail investors. Um, Curious if you have any thoughts on that and their long-term vision. They seem to be taking a similar approach as Robinhood of like it's a place where you can buy or transact any type of money, whether it's a mortgage, it's an investment account. Thoughts on SoFi and this piece of news that just broke this morning.
I mean, kudos. They're finally taking play from the Robinhood playbook. I think a lot of frustration from SoFi shareholders are I know it's yin yang on the offerings in the fintech space between them and Robinhood, but they have been consistently envious of Robinhood's go to market strategy on how much attention and mind share they get. Where Noto is an operator, Vlad is a showman. Like those are the characteristics of those two CEOs. So I think SoFi, it makes sense. It's a low hanging fruit that clearly there's appetite for, and it wouldn't take too much for them to install that into their ecosystem. I think they have Arc X or something where you
Yeah.
can invest in private companies. So like it's not too it's pretty adjacent to what their offerings are already. But for the trend, I think the tokenization of real world assets is very real, and it makes sense for them to kind of get ahead of it from the get go, especially when Robinhood's making that a pretty big pillar of their strategy for for the near term. So I also love seeing it above $20 for the first time in 4 years. Like, and Daniel, I know Daniel's probably doing jumping jacks right now at the gym, saying like, "Let's go."
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating to see these platforms expand. Robinhood also announcing that their Hood Summit is coming to Vegas on September 9th. I hope we are all invited. You guys probably have a better shot
It's
than
on my
I
wedding
do.
day, actually. So how dare he? I have the spotlight that
Wow.
day. How dare he try to do that?
Oh man. But yeah, if the event they had in France is any indication, it's probably going to be extremely lit and well done. Um,
Wait. I need to correct myself before my fiance gets mad at me. It's
okay.
actually 3 days after my wedding.
Oh, so you can make it.
Yeah, I can make
You'll
it.
be on your
Maybe
honeymoon. You're not gonna go
my honeymoon's a Robin Hood summit. Yeah.
quick pit stop at the Hood Summit. Jake, do you ever go to these investor conferences or you like to hang back and do your thing at home?
Yeah, sometimes I do. I haven't been to many recently, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping to go to Stocktoberfest
I
in
heard.
October.
I
So
heard we're
that's
getting a big appearance.
that's one. Um, but no, I haven't been to anything in a while. When I was in Europe, it was more of it was a stock event with Jeremy Newsom, but it was much more kind of intimate, concentrated versus just a huge conference with 200 people.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of prefer those versus massive conferences. But the hood one sounds interesting. I won't make that one because I'll be getting back from South America, going skiing with Brian Shannon in
Oh my God.
Chile. So yeah, that should be interesting.
I love the
Um,
crossover friendship. I didn't know that was a thing. We love that.
yeah,
If
no, yeah,
anyone
him
in
and
the
I ski together all the
Stocktwits
time.
universe wants to go skiing with me,
Yeah,
would
no,
love
it's
to. Uh,
well, we live in Denver, so we go skiing quite often. And just having the luxury of flexibility with the market and all that,
yeah.
there's a storm, we generally try to go up to Winter Park and catch the powder. So hopefully we get some in Chile.
I think you
It's
will.
always
I
it's
heard
always
it's
tough. Like I went to Alaska this year to heli ski, and
whoa.
10 days I was there, it didn't snow one flake. so,
Oh
so I
my
was like,
gosh.
okay, well, hopefully I don't go all the way down to South America and I don't see one flake of snow. So we'll see. It's
Damn.
destination trips like that are always tough. That's why I like living in Colorado because
Yeah.
you go when the snow's good, and you kind of feel bad for people who travel all the way out here and they get here and it's just a dry week and it doesn't snow like literally for 10 days like it happened to me in Alaska. So um but yeah, no, we're doing that, so I'll probably miss the Robin Hood event, but I
I
definitely would
guess I'm
love to
gonna
meet
have to
Vlad one day.
I Yeah, I guess I'll have to represent for the team. That's my ask to be invited. When you're talking about skiing, I was thinking about I realized or not yesterday, last year that Vail is publicly traded. And I think that's
Mhm.
Shy, that feels like an inverse a lot like theme for you because I mean they're consolidating, but like the snow's melting. Um and it seems like it's like the opposite of the fourth industrial revolution. Not to dog
Whoa,
on these
hold on.
guys,
There's
but
going to be robot ski instructors. That's actually
oh,
a massive tailwind for them.
true. I like it. Let's jump over to Samsung real quick. They have just basically waved a red flag for the chip market. They announced an update to their guidance. They're expecting Q2 profit to plunge 56% year over year. They're referencing weak AI chip sales and those U.S. export restrictions to China. So that puts their operating income below estimates. We haven't talked about Samsung in the context of chips much. Thoughts on these guys?
I don't have too much to offer because I like U.S. equity markets. So I just know
Oh,
that
right. We just yeah.
TSMC is king. So I'm not surprised. Like there really isn't there is alternative solutions. Not I'm not saying there isn't, but if these hyperscalers, these big massive companies buying up all these chips, you're not going for the next best. Like, you're going for the best because AI and machine learning is already difficult enough. This race is super intelligence. You want the best equipment for that race. That's TSMC. No other solution. So like, I, and now combine that with a political anchor, geopolitical anchor that like tariffs, like they're in a really difficult spot. And I don't envy their CEO, and I'm not surprised to see their profits demise the way it is because essentially they're not having the leeway to make any kind of strategic pivots, and they're essentially making less for doing the same thing now because of these tariffs.
Mm. Something to watch for sure. I know, Jake, you also had a tweet maybe yesterday about Bitcoin. Um, do you trade off of Bitcoin at all in what you do, or you're sort of just following it? We're hovering near record highs again, and we have the big White House crypto week afoot. I don't know what's going to go down during that, but I'm curious if you think there's anything there, or if I'm actually not sure if you trade on the crypto side.
No, I don't. I use it as a risk proxy in the market. So if Bitcoin's doing well, generally, I kind of have more of a risk on appetite. A lot of the time, Bitcoin will be a bellwether. So if you look
Mm.
at what the market did um, back in January, Bitcoin was the first one to kind of top out, and so Bitcoin rolled over. Then it was Tesla. So I use it as a gauge of risk on appetite in the market. Some people may not agree with that, but that's just the truth. That generally Bitcoin's doing well if there's risk appetite in the market. So yeah, I think we are very close to like a 1-day candle to new all-time highs. If you're just looking, I can share my screen real quick. Shocking, it's gonna look exactly like all the other setups that I like to trade. Volume shelf setup here. You've got a lot of volume aggregating. This shelf kind of acts as a base for price. So the fact that Bitcoin's moving up pretty nicely today and hitting new daily highs, we're still definitely kind of range bound here, but you can also see you have kind of like a flaggish type formation here. So, you got this impulse candle from July 2nd. Impulse candle just meaning like a very strong one single candle move up. So this is kind of like your flag pull from July 2nd. And then here's kind of your consolidation flagging. So I think we're probably 1 to 2 days away from a very strong move in Bitcoin, possibly to new all-time highs. If that does happen, this is when I kind of do the 0.618 extension again, take the high from May 22nd, do the low from June 22nd. That's just the most recent kind of measured move. And so my upside target would be right around 120K. And that's a pretty psychological number as well. So it's a Fibonacci extension, which a lot of people track and follow. And they kind of becomes a self-fulfilling thing. But then also 120 is just a psychological level as well to keep an eye on. So I'm bullish crypto. Like I said, I just don't trade it, but
Yeah.
it is part of my thesis if I'm getting long or getting pretty aggressive, like on the risk side of things, riskier assets. Bitcoin has to be performing as well for me to really kind of have some conviction.
You mentioned Tesla, and I think that's a good. Would love to check back in on them if we can pull their chart up. Um, they're up slightly today, but obviously yesterday, huge dip. We talked about it in the show. I don't know if you guys saw. Do you guys see Dave Portnoy put 10
Yeah,
mil? What do you
yeah.
what do you think? Do you think that's gonna work out for him?
It's hard to say. I mean, the fact that we didn't hit a new low from this disaster of a day on June 5th, the fact that we did hold a higher low here is decent. But Tesla's kind of like a Baba, right? It's so gappy. It's as soon as it looks good, you have overnight or over the weekend news that Elon's starting a new political party, and you know that's why I don't trade Tesla. He moves the market too much on the stock. Like Jeff Bezos, he's not the CEO anymore, but he pretty much is tied to Amazon. You don't really see Jeff Bezos do anything too too crazy or aggressive where it's ever moved the stock that much. Where Elon, he can have one tweet and move the stock pretty quickly. So for me, it's just extremely range bound right now. It's a massive range between 270 and 36 and the 360s, but there hasn't really been any direction for the last 2 months. It's just you get these huge upside moves and then you move down sometimes just as fast or faster. And it's just not a name that I've ever wanted to trade, or just I know a lot of people do trade it, so I track it in my subscription,
Mm.
market analysis subscription for those that trade it. But that's the only reason I post about it, is for them to have important technical levels to look at. It's just not a name that,
Yeah. I mean, if you're in the
yeah.
business of tracking patterns, it's really hard to anticipate next moves there. And I was listening to, I think it was a Financial Times podcast this morning, Shy, and someone made an interesting point where it's kind of like the board's in a rough spot because he's obviously erratic and that's part of the deal, but he's this, genius that you mentioned all the time. He doesn't miss. And then, but the alternative is replacing him with someone boring, like a Jeff Bezos, and then the stock takes because people are like, the genius is gone. So I think they have to stick with the current plan. I don't know as a shareholder if you have any strong thoughts either way, but it seems like there's really it doesn't seem like there's a solution for this in the near term. For investors, it's kind of like buckle up.
Well, if Elon's gone, I'm gone. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people have follow that sentiment, but I made a post this morning actually why I think right now might be the opportune time to merge XAI and Tesla. I think that might provide it somewhat of a bullish tone to offset the political mess that makes too much sense because when you think about Tesla, like what they're trying to solve, or what their data flywheel is, it's essentially what makes their autonomy so scalable and why they are becoming the operating system for physical AIs. Because like every mile that's driven by FSD and every intervention, all these edge cases, it does flow back into their own internal vertically integrated system. That's something that Dan and I talk about all the time. How important it is for you to own that full stack now. And for Tesla, it's the silicon, the sensors, the software, etc. Like that loop essentially feeds back into the dojo, which is their own in-house supercomputer. And it's just everything's in-house internally. And that's very important going forward because you need to control your own data within your own stack. Like it's a massive, massive component of having a moat in the new digital economy. So for Tesla, I think they need XAI's model innovation to really unlock the human level cognition on all their devices for autonomy. And for XAI, they need Tesla's deployment scale to really keep learning. What does this sound like right now? Does this sound like OpenAI and Microsoft in the early days? I absolutely think so. So I think that, yes, maybe XAI can do better long term as a siloed enterprise. But I think right now in this super race that everyone's in for super intelligence, it makes too much sense to merge these companies together. It's a great win-win scenario for XAI and Tesla and for Elon, like having everything under one roof. And it provides him even more leverage in the near term for whatever he's trying to do. And I think I saw Dan Ives make a note this morning on a merger like this maybe provides 25% voting power for Elon. And I think that's huge for him too. So I think right
Mm.
now, like this political, I'm hoping it's theater, but if it's somewhat prolonged more than just a couple months, it's going to be until the midterms. This is going to be a vicious range bound trade, like what Jake's showing that charts. I wouldn't be surprised if it's literally trapped between 250 and 350 for over a year. And it's going to be range bound like it's been past 4 years. But in that meantime, a little juice could be merging XAI, and that would also accelerate autonomy, and maybe it just becomes less of a sci-fi dream, more of a reality, which I think the first domino fell already on that thesis. It's becoming more of a reality. But I do think that's like if I was in that corporate strategy war room, that's something I think would be a big rock of discussion and do some sensitivity analysis on why this makes sense.
Yeah, and when you mentioned the potential to merge, just being in the seat you were in for so long, how long would something like that take? What if they make a decision to do it until it would be you have to go under, I assume, regulatory approvals, things like that. Is that you talking years on that, or does that tend to move faster?
Well, I think in this scenario, it's just Elon and Amir, so that's a negotiation. No,
It's true.
no, I think I don't know the board of directors scenario on XAI, but I'm anticipating they both companies' board of directors have a similar ethos, and that's really important in a negotiation. So I think that it would be a lot more streamlined, especially because XAI is private. I don't think there's going to be any kind of regulatory concerns, especially because of how many models there are out there already, that it's not going to provide some kind of a unfair competitive advantage for Tesla. So I think it'd be pretty streamlined, especially because also Lisa Khan is not in that seat anymore. And I think you're seeing the M&A activity this year alone. The appetite is substantially higher than it was the past couple of years. I don't think it'd be that difficult. I really don't think so. But I don't know the ins and outs because I also don't know the cap table. That cap table
Mm.
situation is the massive, usually the massive bump in any kind of M&A strategy. So I'm just talking like 10,000-foot view on ethos makes too much sense. I think Elon is essentially everyone's eyes goes to Elon. Like, what do you think? He would want it. The cap table might be their only restriction, but I don't think it would be that much.
Yeah, I mean, it would give a lot of people exposure to XAI, which they probably would love exposure to. So, definitely something to watch. Guys, now we're going to go to the time of the show where I give you final thoughts. Something that's top of mind for you, something you're focused on, maybe something your followers and subscribers are asking about. What is kind of the next thing for you? Just call it next 2 days that you're watching. I'll start with you, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still watching Amazon. It's down like 0.4% today, which not not anything out of the ordinary. Amazon is one that likes to dip before it rips. So that's what I'm kind of focusing on. I don't have a like insanely huge position, but I have the August 230s, the August 15th expiration for 230 strikes. I mean, if you go on, I use options flow a lot. I've just seen a ton of orders coming in, even though the price is down today. Um, let me just pull this up real quick. Even though the actual share price is down today, you can see here that um, if you go and you look at kind of orders at the ask, there's a there's a ton of orders coming in for pretty short dated stuff. You got a 258K 240 calls for August 15th. You look at some of these shorter dated ones. um, you just I guess the shorter dated ones are mostly August right now, but 237K for the 222.50 strikes for next week. So, there's this flow coming in. And so if I see a lot of calls being bought at the ask, even though the share price is down, that's generally discrepancy I look for. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But this is one I'm definitely continuing to watch. And then, yeah, just the nuclear names to see if they continue to move up. Soundhound was one that I saw last night. It's up big today, so I'm not going to chase it, but I did give that one as a setup last night, and I think some people were able to take advantage of that. But it's pretty much made a huge move already, so that one's just kind of one I'm watching from afar. But yeah,
Yeah.
Amazon nuclear names are still going to be the ones I keep an eye on.
And not to take us off track, but I'm curious, these tools that you're showing us, how much is AI a part of those now? Like, could you set up, I'm just thinking, if we talk about agentic AI all the time, can you set up like workflows in some of these yet, or is it still pretty early on?
I have no idea. I mean, as far as the flow goes, I think you can set alerts and that type of thing.
Okay.
But as far as kind of anything past that, I don't know really how they do it. It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of data to go through, so I'm sure they're using
Yeah.
some type of
Well,
AI to sort it and all that. But
or even on the user side, I was thinking, because Vlad, we did an interview with him. He was talking about sort of the future vision where within Robinhood's trading tools, you can say, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, and set up this logic, and boom, you set up your strategy and it just goes. And I was wondering how far away some of the platforms are. It sounds like they don't have those things
mm,
quite yet.
I'm sure they do. I mean, I from like a process side of things, like I definitely have an if there's
Mm,
a red day in the market, but the there's a lot of call flow at the ask, then that's adds part of like a higher ranking to my thesis for upside. But yeah, no, I mean you can definitely put together a system and put it all together. If there's a falling wedge breakout with call flow coming in, then you can have a higher conviction trade. But yeah.
interesting. I
Yep.
need to spend more time in these tools. Shy, over to you as we wrap the show. We talked about it being kind of a lazy river of a week over here, but anything you're keeping an eye on?
Nothing specific, just I'm doing the work. The earnings season is coming up. That's going to be a catalytic environment, and I think it's going to move a lot stocks a lot more than people anticipate. So build that conviction list, like do the research, like learn who the winners have been this year and why they've been winning. Is it mainly being on technical trade? Is it Momo trade, or is it something fundamentally changing? In order to do those like work in the lab, like you have to like listen to conference calls, like read the analyst reports, listen to the podcast for the experts in that specific company, um, take notes, like have that wish list, like do all the legwork required. So when things do get a little, VIX is at a 20 handle or things get a little shaky, like you'll have a steady hand to capitalize on rather than, oh, now there's opportunity. Now I'm going to go do the hours of work. Like, it doesn't work that way. When things are quiet, things are humming. That's when you start doing the work, because when things are ugly, that's when you can capitalize. So this week, I'm just doing the work.
All right. Yeah, follow these guys. Check out what they're doing. Bookmark some stocks on Stocktwits. I love that. I had a visual, Shy, when you were talking of like pulling a folder off the shelf when like things are burning around you. So build your folder. Jake, thank you so much for stopping by again. We will, I assume, see you next Tuesday. And Shy, thank you as always. We're back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time with another Daily Rip Live. Hope everyone has a nice day.
Thanks. See ya.